The mycelium is very similar to our own neural nets in our brain. That's why they work there. And they're an overall nutrient that will be able to work with it. So I consider the 5 mushroom blend sometimes the best, even though I use reishi extract by itself quite a bit in all kinds of things, especially the chronic issues like fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome or cancer, Alzheimer's, or things like this. It's absolutely important with what some people call the 4 horsemen.
This is part 2 of my interview with Dr. Terry Willard. Now, in this part, we talk about medicinal mushrooms. Now, if you're not familiar with medicinal mushrooms, I highly recommend that you have a listen. Now, today, Dr. Terry Willard is working with his son, Yarrow, in doing research with mushrooms and their medicinal purposes, as well as longevity. So Dr. Willard brings some wonderful tips for you to implement on your day-to-day life. So again, if you don't know anything about medicinal mushrooms, please have a listen. And also check out the show notes because you're going to get more information. If you're curious and want to know more and how these medicinal mushrooms can help you where you're at and what stage of life you're in, take a moment to go through the show notes as well. Have a listen. I hope you get some really great tips here and this helps you along with your wellness journey. So I'm going to take a turn here and talk more about mushrooms because I know that you have products and I mean, you're working with your son. I think that's wonderful. Do you have other children?
Oh, yes, I got 4
Yeah,
children.
4 children. Are they all in the industry as well or
No.
no?
Oh,
No.
my daughter is a professor of psychology over in England.
Mm.
And one of my other sons works on the synchrotron, which is kind of a big physics experiment in Saskatoon type thing. So it's high level quantum physics type stuff. And my youngest son, who's 23, is still finding his way in life.
But you work with Yarrow and
Yes.
he has a medicinal mushroom or just mushroom farm,
Yes.
Harmonic Arts.
And they're in most of the health food stores.
Yes, yeah, and I have them in the store as well. Now, different mushrooms do different things. So here's one. My sister-in-law is allergic to mushrooms. And I'm saying, well, try the medicinal mushrooms, but she's too afraid to try it.
And a lot of people are, but they almost never cross over. What do I
Yeah,
mean? Well,
yeah.
for example, reishi will take care of almost any allergy you can think of.
Mm,
So it's anti-allergenic, okay?
mm-hmm.
But the button mushrooms, the agaricus mushrooms that we normally put on pizzas and stuff like that, many of the mushrooms we're going to cut up and put in our foods and stuff like that have fungus and molds growing on them. That's what almost everyone's
Right.
allergic to,
Yeah.
not the mushroom itself. And the process of extracting these ones, if you have a solid extract function instead of a mycelium function, would make it so you couldn't have an allergy to it. The parts that would have an allergy to are not there anymore. But the long and the short of it, it will usually get out of that problem. So there's no question she could do reishi or a 5 mushroom blend where you
Yeah.
have some of the top 5 mushrooms, which could help their mental attitudes, calm down their body, work up with the stress, and are definitely the herbs of longevity.
Yeah. I do lion's mane all the time, reishi as well. So those are probably my 2 popular ones because I
And for
want
energy,
people.
cordyceps works the best. So
Okay.
as you're doing 3 or more, you might as well do all 5 at
Oh,
a time
yes.
because
Yeah.
it's still
But
more
then the
expensive.
concentration is not the same though if you're doing all 5. No?
The answer is it's kind of like having a melange or a salad. They actually synergistically work better together as a group than they do
Mm.
as individuals, unless you have very specific reasons. So I would say, like, the number one major herb I use in clinical practice for sure was reishi. But I often gave people a 5 mushroom blend more than just the reishi because they had other issues also. And then sometimes supercharge it with extra reishi. And so that's the way I have fun. So I consider the multiple things kind of like a multiple vitamin, but if you need more vitamin C, you take that separately as an analogy.
Yeah. So this is something I heard you say at one of your lectures. And what we see above the ground, the mushroom, is the root,
No,
but there's a whole network underground. And so whenever I see mushrooms, I kind of like, oh, there's a big network underground.
What you're saying is completely true, except for the stuff above ground is its fruit, just like an apple on a
Fruit.
tree. And the
Okay.
real tree is underground. It's a big network. In fact, some people have called this the worldwide or the wood wide web, meaning it's literally a communication system that's underground. It's communicating all kinds of things, including stresses in environment and nutrient flow and just communication of both food and information. So they're much more connected into our planet than we are, to say
Yeah.
the least. And therefore, reishi is one of the best herbs to help ground a person when they're too excitable, when they get too in their head. So reishi's byline is protect an academic from their own brain.
Mhm.
And it
Yeah.
takes you out of your brain and puts you into your heart. That's why it's such a good heart remedy.
But it's grounding. Now, this is
Yes.
just a thought. So when you're saying reishi, so we live in the northern hemisphere and reishi is grown here. So, you know how we say like fruit is indigenous to our region? Like people say, oh, I'm getting goji berries, but that's from China. So I say, do blueberries. They're indigenous to us, and you'll probably benefit more from that. Would you say that for reishi though?
The reishi grows everywhere in every
Okay.
continent on the planet except for Antarctica.
Okay.
So we have the ones that grow locally, and there's many different species of reishi.
Okay.
So I do agree with what you're saying to a large degree, but some herbs are circumpolar. They're all around the pole here. But I have to say you that for many years, goji berries were given out by the city of Calgary to plant in your boulevards to have these nice little pretty things. And so it grows quite well on the
Okay.
border. They've been using it for years. So when I was a young herbalist, I was quite surprised to find a Chinese herb growing in the back alleys.
So you were talking about the mushrooms and the fruit body, the mycelium, and like the benefit of how it's processed. And, you mentioned the 5 blends, but can you elaborate on a little bit? Like, I get people like, oh, that's not a good mushroom and that's a good one. And it's confusing for the consumer.
Well, it definitely is because
Yeah.
it comes down to having deep knowledge of the literature and the practical aspects of it. It's both over a period of time. I've written 3 books on mushrooms, so I consider myself an expert in that whole area. And even I'm a fledgling,
Mm,
as we could say. But the long and the short of it is they work on our nervous system. The mycelium is very similar to our own neural nets in our brain.
mm,
That's why they work there. And they're an overall nutrient that will be able to work with it. They work a little bit more synergistically sometimes if you do more than one. So I consider the 5 mushroom blend sometimes the best, even though I use reishi extract by itself quite a bit in all kinds of things, especially the chronic issues like fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome or cancer, Alzheimer's, or things like this. It's absolutely important with what some people call the 4 horsemen, the 4 things that are going to take you out the most. Reishi
mm.
is the most important herb for all of those.
Okay.
And the cardiovascular issues, cancer, Alzheimer's are all involved with this whole area and just fatigue in general.
So our naturopath will recommend turkey tail for
And it's
cancer
it's
patients. Yeah.
great. It's great for the immune functions, and it really is good. It's one that's used quite a bit in China, especially Japan. The long and the short of this whole thing is that the turkey tail really functions on our immune system quite a bit. So they use it for all kinds of cancers and all kinds of immune functioning things. At one point in time, it was the #1 selling herb in Japan.
Good. So my son is doing a bit of a research right now in cannabis and mushrooms for, like you're
Yeah.
saying, like end of life and using medicinal mushrooms. So they're doing a bit of research on, offering that as helping them through their end of life, I guess. So yeah, yeah. Okay, so we've covered quite a bit. We talked about, well, we didn't really talk a lot about your school. So you're celebrating 50 years, Wild Rose College of Herbal Medicine, still active and going strong. I'm
Very
so
much
happy
so.
to hear that. And how can people get a hold of you, or, if they want to learn more about the school or mushrooms or
Well, the
yarrow?
easiest thing is just to do wildrose.com or
Okay.
wildrosecollege.com.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Wild
By
Rose College.
yeah, and by doing that, Wild Rose Herbal College, we have
Mhm.
all of those that functions into the whole thing. And they can learn more about me in that, and they can learn more about various things like that. I also have my own blog page, drterrywillard.com, and that goes into all kinds of esoteric things. If you want to see the back end of everything or the funky side of it, you go into that. Plus, it has a lot of scientific research in it. It has everything from crystal skulls or how the mushrooms communicate with each other and how our digestive system works. Or, as you suggested, the mitochondria, how
Mhm.
it functions in the body. So
Mhm.
you can find out way more in that.
So, what's next for Dr. Terry Willard? What's next? I know you're semi-retired, but we never
Well,
retire.
basically, I'm creating more and more content for the whole area of the college for the students. But my biggest area of research at this point in time are two areas, really, but the biggest one is longevity. Of course,
Mm.
I'm getting to that age, longevity becomes important. So, writing courses on it, creating herbal products for longevity, etc., is very significant for me that I'm doing, and at the same time, working with the whole neurodivergent, neurodegenerate area because it's become so important in our culture. And an awful lot of people are trying to figure out, well, they can't find a genetic thing. Is it biological? Is it psychological? Oh my goodness gracious. And I'm saying, no, it's D, all of the above. Haven't you ever taken a multiple choice before? It comes down to it's a combination. There's no gene for ADHD, but there are sets of genes for sensitivity. So the people who have those genes for sensitivity are more prone to have environmental stresses, may that be diet, may it be family issues, et cetera, pushing them into the ADHD area. And explaining that and working with that and working with products for that become very significant. Plus, in the whole longevity thing, spending a lot of energy on things like Alzheimer's. I'm totally
Thank you.
convinced that all Alzheimer's, if you don't get it, it goes through 5 stages. If you get it early enough, 2, 3, or 4, then you can completely reverse it. The later stages, you can just make it a little bit more comfortable.
Right. No, I'm glad you're doing that because this is why I'm starting all of this too. I and the lion's mane. My mom comes from a family of 11. Seven are women. Of the seven, five of them had a form of dementia, including my mom. They've all since passed, and I've looked after my mom. And so I'm all about my own brain health. And they say it starts 20 years before you ever get a
Oh,
diagnosis.
absolutely. Absolutely it does.
And, they will scan a brain, like a woman and a man's brain for a woman, premenopausal, and then they'll scan them again postmenopausal, and a man and a woman, same age, and they'll see diverse differences in their brain, and it's hormones.
But it really comes more down to the fatty acids, the oils. Because what
Okay.
happens is the brain shrinks. It's just a lack of oil, and the
Mhm.
hormones are affecting the oils as it is. But it's a complicated thing, and it's also very, very much based in the mitochondria. That's why I have to have the courses in the mitochondria so people can understand what's happening in a cancer or an Alzheimer's situation. By working on those, you can be able to stop or revert that whole process because there's no part of our body that's more hungry for energy than our brain.
Mhm.
So with the lack of oils and the lack of mitochondria in there, it's more susceptible to create that plaque. All the pharmaceutical stuff that is based on plaque, I'm convinced that the plaque is the cause of an autoimmune disease. It's not the cause of Alzheimer's. So you have to work in those fields. I'm working with that. And so again, we have courses on Alzheimer's in the college, et cetera, how to go through that. And hopefully in the future, if our government is amenable, we'll have products on the market for that.
So, can I say, and tell me if I'm wrong with this. So, again, it's mostly like perimenopausal, menopausal women, and they're waking up in the middle of the night, can't sleep, whether it's blood sugar dropping or stress. And so that's when your liver's doing all its detoxing, but then the brain is getting rid of unwanted proteins. So I almost feel like there's a bit of a backlog there because you wake up, turn the light on, go to the washroom, whatever you do, you can't fall back to sleep. So the liver's not doing what it's supposed to do. So the brain is not doing what it's supposed to do. And then it creates sort of this brain fog over time.
Absolutely. In fact, I would have to say that Alzheimer's itself is really almost as much as the liver immune functioning that irritation that's happening inside a person and mostly around the liver. So you have to work that the liver support itself really works on that a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But then you want to pick up the mitochondria and work with that to work with this whole phenomena. Yes, waking up between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock, usually 3:33 or something like that, is a sign that there is problems in your liver.
Right. Okay. In saying that, so the mitochondria, is there any way that things are not absorbing that hinder? I know you mentioned krill oil doing the fats, but that nutrients will not get into the mitochondria.
Absolutely, there's a lot of it. And again, that's one of the reasons you do 2 to 4 detoxes a year to clean out the tube. We might think we eat food because it tastes good,
Mm-hmm.
but the real reason we eat food is to get the energy from it, the nutrients from it, those
Mm-hmm.
things. And literally, we're like a big donut. This is one end, and well, you know where the other end of the donut is. But
Yeah.
the long and the short of it is, it's not in our body yet when it's in the hole of the donut. It's just
Right.
going through the system. It has to absorb across. So keeping that clean. Now, in sacred geometry, that's a thing called a tube torus. In almost all ways of making energy, like a turbine working the hydropower in Niagara Falls down that way, or with a windmill going around, it's a tube torus that creates the energy. That's how our planet works. That's how our galaxy works. And so we have to have our tube torus, our hole in our donut, functioning properly to be able to absorb the energies, to be able to get to the place. So it's not just the nutrients, it's the chi or the energy that comes along with it that's very significant.
Yeah. And, we often hear like, well, we're eating in front of our phones or in front of the TV or the computer and just relaxing to eat to absorb
Be
as
more mindful eating.
well.
So we
Yeah.
strongly suggest when you're doing a detox, you try to at least take that time, be mindful of what you're eating. So,
Yeah.
your tube by doing a detox 2 to 4 times a year will really help that. Then you need to get the right nutrients in and be able to get the body to be able to ship it around properly.
So we have trillions and trillions and billions of cells, and every cell has a mitochondria.
No, each one has between 1 and 10,000 mitochondria, each
Oh my
cell.
goodness.
So
I've never heard
so
that.
the richer the area is, like the heart and the brain, there's
Mm,
way more mitochondria in every cell.
wow.
One that only has so red blood cells don't have any mitochondria, and a sperm only have 3, and that's actually to make the tail go. But
Yeah.
all the rest have multiple things. So it's a primordial function that's actually the biggest thing in our body. And to remember, the mitochondria used to be another bacteria that our cells took in to make the energy for us, so we didn't have to.
Hmm.
And this is obviously millions of years ago.
Right. So probiotics? No.
Well, you're quite right. It all comes down to how the microbiome works. That's another reason to do the detox. If your microbiome, especially in your digestive tract, is functioning properly, the microbiota in our body communicates directly to the mitochondria and directly to the brain. Interestingly enough, when I was in university, we thought the vagus nerve coming out of our brain controlled the digestion. Now we find the vagus nerve is over 70% of the information is going from the gut to the brain instead of how we thought it was back in the
Oh,
70s.
oh,
And it's
interesting.
because of the mitochondria are stimulating that and sending the information along. And it transfers almost like a Bluetooth function. So it's electromagnetic and it's neural. By doing that, by having good microbiota, you're creating good mitochondria. They're the same thing.
Hmm.
They're just different orders of magnitude size.
Okay, so then what about sensey cells, like cells that are dying off? Yeah.
Senile cells.
Senile.
And some people call them zombie cells. They clog up the system. Therefore, they're zombies that are kind of walking around that still need energy, but they're not productive.
Right, right.
And
So
maybe they're actually eating our own brain, and that's part of
yeah,
what Alzheimer's
yeah.
is.
Well, and to get them out of our system, so doing a detox would help get rid of those zombie
Absolutely,
cells. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
It's
Okay.
very important. A green food will do that. Flavonols will do that, and so will the oils flush it out.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Terry Willard. I'm going to end right here because that's so much information. And again, people can go to Wild Rose Herbal College or even just Google Dr. Terry Willard and you'll come up and they can get more information on you. You know, look after your liver. I think that's key right now. The reishi mushrooms for cognitive health and energy, all good things going into 2025. Look after yourself because no one else is going to do it for you. Thank you for joining me today and good luck. We'll be watching for all what you're doing in 2025 and future.
Thank you. You're so knowledgeable, and to be able to work along with a colleague like you, it's just great. So I thank you for having this podcast.
Oh, thank you. Take care.